So this is a video I've been meaning to make for a while. By the end of it, you should be able to install N8N along with Coolify in a Docker container on a free instance of Oracle Cloud with 4 OCPUs and 24 gigs of RAM, which is free forever. There are a few caveats with it, but all in all, it's pretty good. It's a solid bit of hardware, and you can do whatever testing and things on you need, and it's all free. The only downside is it takes a little bit of setup. There is going to be some maintenance, but that's what Coolify is generally for. But afterwards, you should have a pretty good environment to do whatever you like with. One thing to note is this video is not going to include setting up your Oracle Cloud account. It's pretty straightforward. You do need to put in your credit card details. It doesn't charge you, but you do need them to allow you to effectively get the free options provisioned within your account. If you don't do it, you won't be able to easily provision any of the free servers because they're all being taken by people that have the potential to pay. That's what I found through my experience. Anyway, let's jump into it. So this is your Oracle Cloud site. You sign up and you sign in. Once you've, like I said, done all of your credit card details and various things like that, what you can do is, and I may make another video on this, is to set the ability to alert you if you are going beyond your free tier boundaries. But I'm not going to do it in this video because this is already going to be long enough. One of the other requirements is you have Cloudflare. So create yourself a Cloudflare account. You also need a domain. So if you don't have a domain, I'd suggest purchasing one for the purpose of this. Can be any domain you like a cheap one, or even a subdomains of a domain that you already own. You will need to manage it through Cloudflare, and I will show you part of that setup within the process. But you need the Cloudflare environment to be able to set up HTTPS. And HTTPS is important on N8N if you want to use any other third-party services that require SSL. Things like Meta, some Google APIs, and various other things. It's definitely a very good idea to get yourself set up for HTTPS. It'll save you a headache down the track, trust me. So right, once we're in the Oracle Cloud Platform, I must admit it's not the easiest thing to navigate around until you get used to it. It is a bit clunky. They are trying to improve the experience, but yeah. Anyway, to be honest, once you're in it and you've done it, you get used to it. I mean, to make this video and to test this process, I've probably installed and reinstalled and installed and reinstalled in excess of 20-30 times maybe. So I'm pretty good at navigating myself around it now. So when you want to build a new instance, over here on the right hand side you've got Create VM. Now there's a couple of parts to this, and I'm just thinking in my head now whether I explain the networking section or the VM section. Let's do this way. So we're going to create a new instance. Now this is reasonably simple. So you name it. I'm just going to leave it as it is because it doesn't really matter to me. I'm going to be deleting this one as soon as I created it anyway. When you set up your account, you'll be given a region. It's best to put this region as close to you as possible. The reason being is that it will be quicker for you and your clients, or for yourself. In the advanced option, you leave it as is on demand capacity, and you don't change any of these other settings. Now the image that you need is going to be Ubuntu, and we're going for 24.04, which is the latest version. Now you select the image, and the logo changes to make sure that you are on the right operating system. Now you change the shape. Now the shape is effectively the virtual instance. Now you don't really change any of these options unless you want to pay. The free option is a virtual machine, and it's an ARM based processor. And you see the free eligible. You select this, and this is where you are selecting the maximum capacity for the server on the free tier. Now this is 4 OCPUs. Once you click out of that, it will change the amount of RAM to 24 gigabytes. This is the maximum you can get for the free tier. You can have like multiple small instances. So you could have 1 OCPU or 2 or 3 or up to 4. Any more than that, you'll start to pay, which is not really the intention for this particular environment. So select the shape, and you can see they're both configured. In advanced options, you don't really need to change anything here unless you want to. I recommend vulnerability scanning, a management agent, and you can do custom logs as well if you wish. And I'll just chuck them on for this demonstration. Security, you don't need to touch any of this. This is where you select your networking. What we're going to do is we are going to create a new virtual cloud network, and we're going to come back to configuring this. It's important that we configure this after it's built, because you need to open a number of ports to allow the N8N and various other services to communicate, because there is a firewall that's attached to this, and it won't allow you to do a lot of things. And in advanced options, we do not need to make any changes. An important part is the SSH keys. Without these, you can't actually communicate with your server. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a Windows command line to actually create these keys rather than creating them here. Because if you're on Windows, you'll have to type a number of other commands if you don't do it in this particular way, because it will not let you connect to the server if you have not given the right permissions to the keys. And then you'll have to basically remove all the permissions and add the permissions back again, which is a bit of a pain. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to upload a file. Before I can upload a file, I need to create one. Now to do that, you need to open up Windows PowerShell. In the document, I'll put some other notes about Apple Linux, or you can Google how to do it yourself. It's entirely up to you, or you can use the generate pair for me, but I would advise against that unless you know what you're doing, because you have to set some permissions, but you can use our friendly AI tools to help you understand how to do some of this stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the commands that I need. And once you get your head around this, is not too difficult. It's like it really is quite a straightforward process. So the command you're going to need is this one. Now SSH keygen, this is a particular type of private public key generation process, and the key name is going to be called Coolify _key, and this is going to be saved in your on your profile with these keys. So it will generate for you. In this particular folder, I've already got some keys. I'm going to overwrite these keys because I don't need them anymore, because I've done this a few times. So we're just going to go yes. And you don't want to enter any passphrases. Just don't enter any passphrases. Enter. So this is going to have generated you a key. So what we'll do is we'll just navigate to this folder. Oops. Now in this folder, we'll see our private key and our public key. And I've got a lot of files you don't need to worry about. So these keys are extremely important. You can regenerate them and do things after the fact, but you don't want to do that. Trust me, you don't want to do that. These keys are important because they're effectively your passwords to log into your server from the command line, and which we'll get to. So once you've created your keys, it's a very simple process. Just you need to know the right commands. You can then upload your public key. So what we'll do is we will navigate to the folder, and you'll see the key. And there it is. It's uploaded. Now we move on to the next stage. Boot volume. I normally set this to 50. You can add other volumes. You get up to 200 gigabytes in storage space, I believe, from this point in the recording anyway. I normally set it to 50 gig. There should be plenty, and you don't need to attach any other volumes, and just select next. Next is where you do your reviews. I highly recommend you view the estimated cost, and you'll see it's $3.19, but it doesn't actually charge you. The reason you best do this is because you can make a mistake, and you have put your credit card details in. So if you do make a mistake and you put something like a bare metal server or whatever, you're going to get charged for it if you start to use it. So estimated cost is a good thing to do every time you build one. Now you can check through these if you wish to. We're going to come back to this and configure this. Once this is all done, hit create. And the process starts. Now, as I mentioned before, if you were at the previous stage and you hit create and you haven't put your credit card details in and set up for a pay-as-you-go type subscription, you'll notice that you'll get an error message that the resources are not available. Unless you happen to be in a particular country where there's heaps of Oracle resources available, then you will be able to get one. But because I live in Australia, there are never any resources unless you're on a paid plan. But again, like I said, it's as free as you'll get for the resources that you're going to get from this server. Now this process takes 30 seconds maybe, and once this process is complete, we will go, and here we go. All you need to do is go back to instances, and you'll see that it is running and you have an IP address. This IP address is important for a number of reasons. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to set up the networking. So in the networking tab, we have to change some ports. So in the default route table, if I remember correctly, we have our internet gateway. Now, we are in the wrong place, so excuse me for a second. Yeah, so it's actually, we need to go to the security tab and default security lists and then security rules. Okay, so once we're in security rules, we need to add some ingress rules to allow for a number of ports to be made available. I'll put all this information in a document so it's easy to follow, or as easy to follow as I can make it. And if anybody has any questions about anything, they can ask me and I can do my best to answer. But we need to open some ports. If we don't open these ports, then a few things won't work, and it can be quite frustrating when you don't know why something's not working. So the ones we're going to add here are going to be port 22, which is already open, I believe. Just confirm that is, yeah, 22 is already open, which is SSH, which is what we need to actually connect to the server from the command line, which we'll get to. So we need to open port 80. And we add another rule. And we need to add HTTPS, which is 443, and we need to add port 8000, which is our Coolify admin port, and we need to add 3000 for our Coolify real time. Now, this was quite a bit of trial and error. I have a feeling that there's a couple of ports in here that we may not need, but just for the sake of what I know currently works, I would suggest doing this. You can always do some testing of yourself and find out what you need and what you don't need. So all of these are now configured, so that's what we need to do for the networking. So if we click on the little button up here, we can go back to the main networking area. I've got another network available here. This is my previous one that I haven't deleted yet. I wanted to create a brand new network just on the just so that you could see the process. If you do delete the instances and recreate the instances, I wouldn't delete your networking because you can just reuse it. You just need to select it when you're creating your instance. I just did it this way around so that you could see how it works. If you need to go back to your instances, you can pin them and then use the menu, and you can see it's running. So what we're going to get onto now is we're going to add this IP address to Cloudflare. So what you need to do here is you need to add your domain to Cloudflare. Now I'm not going to explain on how you do that in this particular video. If somebody needs it, then I can, but I'm not going to do it in this video just for the sake of this is already going to go on long enough. So once you've added it, you go to your SSL TLS, you can configure the encryption mode. Now it's just encryption mode to full. This will work. And that's about all you need to do there. So you can just go back to your DNS. Now when you're adding a DNS record against the domain name that you've selected, you just select add record and you put in the IP address from your server, and then here in the for an A record, you need to add two separate subdomains. The subdomains are for the Coolify admin and for your N8N admin. So I'm just going to put Coolify, and I'm going to put I suggest you don't use underscores in your subdomains. Some applications don't like them and you'll get an error, so I suggest using dashes or whatever. Because I've been doing this a number of times now, I've had to version control a lot of my subdomains, and otherwise they can take a little while to propagate, and then you can end up with problems where you can't access your server because of IP address changes. So just when you're doing testing and building this out, because you'll probably do this a number of times, I did, till I got it right and found out all of the nuances to building this solution out. So I'm just going to put in V100 just to make sure that I don't get myself confused. So I deleted a few of these subdomains before I created the video, and then you save. It's best to do this as soon as you get your IP address, just so that it can propagate through the DNS servers, so that you can access it, because otherwise you might have to wait a minute. But I strongly suggest you change your subdomains each time. It just makes it easier for you. Okay, so the other one we're going to need is so N8N-100 for our N server, so we can access it. You can leave these proxied. This does help for security reasons as well. And then hit save. So that's all done. They're all good. Now we need to connect to the server. Now connecting to the server requires your private key, and you need to use some command line magic, and we will show you that. So when you're at the command line, there is a particular command to access your server using SSH. Now this command is looking for a file. Now this is your key file. Now depending on where you decide to save it, if you don't use this particular methodology, you will need a path to where your key is located, and you need to make sure that this is available, because you can't access your server. The user that you need to use is already within this, and it'll be in the document. is Ubuntu, because that's the user that will be logging in to the server. It won't be logging in as a root, which is what a lot of people use, just for a little bit of extra security. And where it's got these angle brackets here, that's the IP address of the server. So you just need to remove this, grab the IP address of the server, and add it back. And if everything goes well, you'll be asked for your fingerprint, which is going to recognize the IP address, and you just type in yes. If you have done it a different way and you're using the keys generated by Oracle, then you are going to probably, if you're on Windows anyway, come into a situation whereby it won't let you, and that's because you have too much, you don't have enough security on your private key, and it won't let you for security reasons. So you'll need to do a few other commands, which I might add to the document, or I can give other people in the comments, if they desire, the commands to do that. Or you can look them up yourself on the web, or ask our AI friends. So this is now going to connect to the server, and it's going to say blah blah blah, you don't have any warranty. So anyway, what we do now is we need to upgrade the server. And to upgrade the server, I've left some handy little commands which are going to do all of the upgrades for us. Now, these upgrades are going to probably take about 10 minutes, so I'll probably pause the video while this is doing it. This is the first command. I'll leave it running so you can see how this works. So this is connecting to the Ubuntu servers, and it's going to upgrade to the latest version, security patches and various other things. And once it's completed, it will just say it's completed. So I'll pause the video at this stage so we're not waiting endlessly for the updates. I've done this quite a few times, so I know it takes a while to update. So this is gradually coming to the end of this first part. So we are almost there, and there we have it. So the next upgrade that we'll do is we're just going to install some additional tools. You don't have to do this part, but some of them could be useful. This one doesn't take very long, and I'll probably put in the document what these tools can be used for if anybody needs them. What I like to do now as well is I set the service time. I'm in Australia, Sydney. It just helps setting things like the correct time zones for servers and things, and you probably want to do an N8N as well, is so that when you're doing you're trying to examine log files and things like that, you don't end up having to convert time zones and stuff, because it's just a pain. So it's just a quick update. Next thing you're going to want to do is install Docker. Docker is what's going to contain your Coolify install. If you don't know what some of these things are, then I suggest you have a look online to check what some of these things do. This is just getting the Docker install script, and then it's just running that script. This doesn't take a particularly long time from memory. And once it's done, we just need to do some permission changes to the current user. So permission change, we will change the user mod Docker container to user, which is Ubuntu. That just means it's the current user that's logged in. Now we need to reboot the server. Rebooting the server now is a good idea. You can exit out of here and do the next part, but it's better to reboot the server just so that some of those updates are put in place and the permissions. So rebooting, just says system will reboot. It takes a couple of seconds. All you need to do is use your up arrow to get back to the previous command to SSH back into the server. I'll give it a sec and then go. And it should be up. Nope, it's not up yet. So like I said, it takes a couple of seconds for it to reboot. And we're back. You can see some system information here if you need to, memory usage, etc., which obviously isn't very much because we're not really doing a lot. So now we just want to test Docker. So we're just going to pull just a hello world just to make sure that it's working. This is going to store it locally. It won't find it, but then it will get it, and then it will just come up and say hello from Docker, which is done, which is cool. So now we are towards the end of this particular part, which we need to install Coolify. Now Coolify, if anybody hasn't used Coolify or doesn't know what it does, it's just like a hosting environment for things like N8N. It allows you to upgrade them easily and do a whole bunch of stuff that is not command line based like this is, and it will just help you maintain your servers better. And you can install other things and do lots of other fun stuff. And it just makes it a little bit easier than trying to do all of the N8N stuff without that. If you are a newbie or don't really like the command line. I don't mind the command line, but if you can find things to make your life easier and concentrate on the job at hand, then that's probably a better thing to do. So to install it, we just do this. And again, all of these will be in the document, so it's easy for you just to copy and paste them across. I've done all the hard work. So this just installs. Now there's a few key points here that stumped me for a bit when I was installing and uninstalling and installing and uninstalling a number of times. And it's to do with local versus server installs in Coolify, and to do with security. You can run the local environment, and you'll understand what I mean when you get to this. And it works without fault. But the one thing you won't be able to do is have multiple subdomains of your environments within Coolify. So it's best to do it with the server point, and I'll just show you, what that means when we get there. This tells you some nice jokes that are very, very geeky, which you can read and enjoy whilst this part is loading. And they're super geeky. So it takes a couple of seconds. I don't think I'll pause it, I think I'll just carry on. Here we go. So okay, so congratulations. You'll notice that you have your IP address, which is your server IP address, and it's available on port 8000. This is the port that we opened up in the networking configuration. Now you can actually just go here and create your Coolify account. However, don't do that. What you first want to do is fix some permissions on some folders. Now to do that, you just do this, and it gives your user Ubuntu access to some of these folders. Now if you don't do that, you're going to get some errors about access once you try and configure your Coolify environment, which can be painful to try and troubleshoot, which like I said, I've done this a number of times now, and I've done it so that this process is reasonably seamless for everybody. It is a process, like I said, but it is a little bit more seamless than my pain that I had to go through. Okay, so now we need to fix the permissions with our SSH keys. Now this is the critical part to make the server environment work within Coolify. If you don't do this, then things break and you will probably cry. because I almost cried. So now we're going into the Docker container as root, which we need to make some of these permission changes. And the permission changes that are key are these two. So you make these changes. It's going to say, do you want to paste both? I do. Now it's made the changes to those paths, and they're critical to making this work for the server, as I mentioned. Now we need to restart the Docker container. We exit out of here, and we run this command to restart. Now, if everything goes well, we should restart. A few seconds, and we should be restarted. Now, we can go to this URL. Now it's probably, or it may give you a warning to say that this is not secure, but that's okay because we're going to resolve that. We're on a HTTP anyway, but it will, yeah. So it doesn't support a secure, which is fine because this is only this is only for you. And now we are in the Coolify account creation process. So this is where you just create your own account. Your password. And register. We'll just save it for now. Okay, so now we are at the onboarding stage. You can skip it if you want, or you can restart it, but just don't. Just follow the process. Okay, so self-hosting with superpowers. This is what it's all about. So you can read this and understand it. Now, this is where I was talking about localhost versus remote server. Now, you can use localhost, and that will work fine. And it'll probably be easier for you to some degree, but I suggest doing the remote server for the reasons I stated earlier. Now with the remote server, it's going to say SSH keys. Now do you have? Now I like to use the SSH key that I have for my Oracle server because it means I only have one key to use, and it makes it a bit easier. And it gives you some explanations about things if you really need them. But I do have my own key. So you can name this whatever you like. I just name it SVR. And I do that because if you have a local one, it's easier to remember. Anyway, you put a description about what it is. And you need your private key. So you get your private key from your private key folder, which is here. And you open it. Now I'm going to be deleting all of my keys after this video. So you grab that, make sure you get all of it, and you paste it in here. I always remove the end line, even though I don't think you need to. That space at the end, it always does that. And you hit save. Now there's some bits in here you need to make sure you get right. Again, you can change the name, do whatever you want. The IP address is the IP address here of your server. In later server creations, you will use a domain name that you've created, but so put that in there. Make sure you get rid of any HTTPS's or any silly things like that. It needs to be the IP address. And now don't forget to do this, because if you do, it won't work. You need this to be Ubuntu. Make sure you change it to Ubuntu. Even though it says experimental, change it to Ubuntu, otherwise it won't work, because it's not going to have the right permissions to do the things it needs to do. And you hit continue. Now this bit, if you haven't done the permissions properly on any of those things that I explained earlier, this will fail. So go back and change those permissions. You can still carry on, the process you don't have to start from the beginning or anything like that. You can just set those correct permissions and this will continue. So the moment of truth, there we go. it's validating, and here we have it. So you can actually skip this part if you want and just have a look around your new server, but we can create a project, and I suggest just going straight into creating N8N and moving on with the process. Resources. So if anybody's ever used Coolify, this is a Coolify. So what I like to do first is go to, instead of creating my new project and attaching it to my server, I like to go to the settings tab. It's going to give you a few things when you first set it up, notifications. You can just accept these and you can disable this pop up. If you haven't opened up port 3000, you're going to get this message. And I have, however, for some reason it takes a minute for it to work it out on the new install. It seems to be okay afterwards, but if not, then you have to look at your ports. The IP address is hidden. This is the IP address of your server, which is just here. Now the instance domain. Now this is where you put in your Coolify domain. Now it's important you do some of these things because it's going to affect your webhooks in N8N. So this you will need HTTPS because you want it to be a secure server. This is the subdomain, and you need to put in the main root domain, which in my case, my test domain is Coolify. Should I spell it right? Sometimes I'm a little bit dyslexic, so you have to excuse me. Coolify.ai.com, and then hit save. And if everything goes well, it should success. Now, again with time zones, I change my time zones. So that things like log files, you want the log files to work properly. Okay, so that bit's done. You don't need to do anything else in here at this stage. So we went to projects. Just don't worry about that. So my first project has already created that one from the path that you didn't complete, and you go new resource, N8N server, or you can do this if you want, but N8N, and then you want to choose your server settings. So it's going to say exited because it's not actually been deployed yet, you haven't done anything. You can call it something, so I'll call it N8N1, actually call it V1. You can use underscores in names in this environment, just don't use them in your subdomain, so it breaks it. Now, you've got this lovely thing that's supposed to help things out. Now this doesn't help things out. This helps things out in a different way. You need to change this to your N8N subdomain. So this is HTTPS. N8N dot coolAspectAI.com. Now save. Success. For some reason it doesn't close. UI thing there, and you'll see it still doesn't look like it's worked because at this stage we haven't deployed it. So we'll save that here. Save success. Now you can deploy it now, and it should go live. However, I like to change some environment variables, and I like to go to the developer view. You'll notice that your fully qualified domain name is here, and I like to change a few things. Now, I'll see if I've got the file saved, because it does make it easier to copy and paste if I have it. If not, we might come back to it, but let's see if I have the correct. And you can do this bit afterwards as well. I might just skip this bit because I don't want to go through the process of looking all of these things up whilst I'm doing this. What I might do is I'll just pause this quickly and see if I can find them. Okay, so I found them. and I'll put these in the document if you need them. Otherwise, you can just look up them, or you can use the defaults, whatever you fancy. You'll find some things work better, some things don't. Generally, the time zone is so that things work in your time zone. Otherwise, you're going to have weird stuff that happens at different times. The host is obviously where your endpoint is. The protocol. This is for your Coolify configuration, and in the webhook tunnels, you can use that if you wish. You can set some auth in here if you wish, and you can do a few other things here that aren't mandatory, but it's entirely up to you. And once that's done, I like to go back to general and save. I don't know if it makes any difference, but it just makes me feel like it's actually saved what I've saved. See what I mean? I'm not entirely happy with the way this interface works. So there you go, now it's saved. This is what I wanted to do. It takes all the comments out. So cool. So now you can either go to advanced and force deploy or force cleanup, but you don't need to. This is how you would also update your N8N, and then deploy. So if everything goes well, and you've done all of your SSH stuff correctly, then this is going to work. And if you haven't, then it won't. And you'll have to error check it. And I can help to a degree, but this stuff is can be a bit time consuming to figure out. So I suggest using all of your friendly AI helpers to get some of this done, and you'll probably have a better time. So that takes a sec to deploy. Once it's deployed, you'll get a message. You can close out of this, doesn't matter, but you hopefully get a green, lovely green message. Here we go. We're still deploying. Oh, it's green. You can see it behind. So once it's created its containers and various bits and pieces, see this data Coolify. This is where you had to set the permissions for your Ubuntu thing before in the previous steps. Otherwise, it would not be able to write to these folders, and therefore you would have errors. But those permissions were given to that user, so they can write to it. Okay, so this is it's running, and you see that little warning sign. That's just it wasn't quite there yet, and then it goes to running. Now it's running. You should better actually go here. So I normally just do a copy and paste here, and then go to it. And if we're lucky, here we are. And this is secure. Connection is secure, which means that all of our extra tools we want to add, we can add. Now it's a good idea once you've done this just to check your webhooks, because sometimes if you don't configure it correctly and don't follow the steps in the order, you're going to get webhooks that don't look like the webhooks you want. You need to make sure there's no port numbers or anything weird on there, so just configure this as you would normally. I'm going to delete this so it doesn't matter about any of this. I know if I don't type this right, then I'm going to end up. You do want to do that, but anyway, we'll get there. No, I don't at the moment. It's going to ask you if you've done this on Railway or Render or whatever. It's going to ask you the same questions. It's going to do a little bit of config in the background so that all of that nice stuff gets loaded. Come on. So it's taken us 45 minutes so far to get to a working a working setup. It should take you a lot less time because you don't have to listen to me waffle on. However, once you're done, you will have a nice working Coolify with projects and servers and all of the other nice Coolify stuff that you can set. You can set it to backup, which I recommend that everybody sets up their transactional email so that you receive any errors and things. You set it to backup because you're going to want to back up all of your stuff, and highly recommend that you do that. And here we are. You can skip this for the time being. So you have a brand spanking new environment set up, and see this got an update. You can fix that. You can fix that by redeploying. So projects, my project, N8N, advance, pull the latest image and restart. Just gives you a warning because it's not done it yet. So we'll just let it do that. Obviously, bear in mind that just be mindful if you are going to use this for client stuff, because it's not managed by anybody else but you. You have to know when things are running and when things aren't running, and make a judgment call about when you're going to do things. And also, if you're running stuff for yourself, make sure that nothing critical is running when you're doing these updates, because you're likely going to end up with partially completed tasks, which you don't want. You can refresh this just to see if it's 100% running, and it should be. So in theory, when I do a refresh here, that should go away, but it doesn't. So it's obviously still updating. Anyway, you can work on that. So we start from scratch. We need to use one webhook call, and here we go, perfect. So HTTPS, our subdomain, our main domain, .com, there's no port numbers, and your standard test URLs and production URLs. So there we have it. We have completed in 47 minutes. That is a fully working and free cloud instance on a reasonably powerful server, which should do you for all of your own personal stuff and probably plenty more. With Coolify, so your management structure is there, your cloud infrastructure service is there, your DNS is set up. Go make stuff. Okay, if you've enjoyed this, you can like my first video if you wish. If you didn't, you can make a comment and maybe we'll have a chat. Okay, thank you.